Hey guys, today we're going to talk about the brand that everybody loves to hate. We're going to talk about Hublot and my new Hublot watch. As many of you probably already know, Hublot is the brand that everybody loves to hate on social media. So my question is, why is that? And your answer is probably because they suck. But do they really suck? Or is it just like a herd mentality type of thing? Before we start to talk about the brand as we know it today, I want to talk a bit about the history of the brand and the first watch they released. So Hublot was founded back in the mid-70s and they actually released their first model in 1980. They were founded by an Italian watchmaker called Carlo Crocco. He wanted to produce his own watch in the luxury watch segment. So at this time, guys, in the early 80s, end of the 70s, we just had seen the launch of the AP Royal Oak, the Nautilus, the Girard Perregaux Lariato, and many other sports models. But what we didn't have at that time was a luxury watch on a rubber strap. So what Carlo Crocco did was to pair something that's usually very traditional, that will say the precious metal watch, with a new material that hasn't really been used within the luxury segment of the industry before, because at this time rubber straps were usually synonymous with cheap quartz watches. So what Carlo did was to fuse a precious metal and a new material, which is the rubber strap, and he fused those two together and created the first Hublot watch. So the name Hublot actually means porthole in French, and as you can see, the design resembles a porthole. So the Hublot model was the first watch released by the brand, and eventually they changed the name into Hublot after a couple of years. And that's where it all started, and that's what this video is partly about, at least. This fusion between a rubber strap and a precious metal case was actually a first in the watchmaking industry. And this is something that we are quite used to see today. We have, for example, the Aquanaut coming on a rubber strap, and we have various AP models coming on rubber strap. So this has actually become something that is quite usual for the luxury watch industry, but back then, 42 years ago, it was never seen before. Hublot had mixed success. It went pretty good in the beginning, and it took some time to build up the brand awareness. During the 80s and 90s, the sales were okay, but nothing revolutionary, until 2004, when Mr. Jean-Claude Biver took over the company and he started to work his magic. So what he did, and this is a big part of the brand's success, he took over the company and he had a good track record of reviving other brands, such as taking Blancpain from a traditional and rich heritage brand to something new and fresh. Also with Omega, he was very crucial for their success, and even making Omega the official watch of Mr. James Bond. So Biver took over in 2004, and in 2005 they launched the Big Bang, and in the world of watchmaking back then, it was truly a big bang. They made a big bang in the industry, and people were like, okay, oh my God, what is this? This is something new, nothing we've seen before. Back in 2008, they introduced the classic Fusion line, which also has been a staple in their collection ever since. And back in 2013, they finally launched their own in-house movement. And this is the part where some of the critique, stems in, because Hublot didn't produce their own movements from scratch. But we'll get to that part a bit later. During the Jean-Claude Biver era, they started to work a lot with new materials as well, such as magnesium, zirconium, mixing Kevlar, tungsten, and various different models into their watches. And this is the part where I believe that Hublot should have some credit, because they have really developed new materials and techniques for their watches, which I find quite interesting. Another part of their big success has been, oh, by the way, this video is not sponsored by Hublot. Another big part of their success has been their sponsorships, for example, of football teams also sponsoring and being the official timekeeper of the World Cup and for FIFA. They have made an impact in their pretty short period of time that the company has, been alive, especially if we look back, it's merely 20 years since Jean-Claude took over in 2004. So the journey has really been intense for the brand. All right, so that's a bit about, the brand and where they are now. They got acquired back in 2008 by LVMH, which is this huge conglomerate that also owns Zenith and Tag Heuer. But to talk a bit about this watch and why I bought it, I've always been drawn towards the quirky stuff that's usually not so hyped, because walk around in town, you see 200 Submariners. How many gold Hublots do you see? Not many, if any at all. So this watch has been on my radar for 3 years, and I started to look for one in gold in the year of 2019 and hesitated a bit, wasn't sure really about the market price. Was it 2,000 euro or was it 6,000 euro, because the prices were differing a lot. Before I splashed 4,000 or 5,000 euros on a gold Hublot in a 36mm case with a quartz movement, I wanted to try out if the model was actually for me at all. So back in 2019 I bought my first Hublot MDM Geneve, and it was in stainless steel. Shockingly, I really liked the watch. I like how it sits on the wrist. As I mentioned, 36mm in diameter case, very thin on the wrist, so it wears super nice and comfortable, and also with the very thin and elegant rubber strap. So this is actually a sporty yet elegant watch in my opinion, and I wore it for a couple of months, really enjoyed it. But then a friend of a friend actually contacted me and said, hey, I need that watch, can you please sell it to me? I was like, okay, if I want to replace this, it's fairly easy to find another crisp example. So I sold it to him and felt a bit of regret actually after selling it. So 2 years ago in 2020, I actually went out and bought my second Hublot MDM Geneve, and that one was in stainless steel and yellow gold. That one I also kept for a while, but then eventually I had to sell it because I was going to buy my Cartier Pasha. And ever since I first laid eyes on the yellow gold version, I couldn't really let it go. So I've been scouting auctions, Chrono24, every place possible to search to find one of these in crisp condition. And eventually I found one just last month, and I felt like, okay, price isn't the best, but the condition is really good. So I need to, buy this one. Said and done, now I have it on my wrist, and it's a watch I truly enjoy. I actually wore it with a suit yesterday at an event, suit and tie, and it just felt right. It's a bit, out of character maybe to wear this one with a suit, but I really felt like an Italian industrialist with a lot of money wearing a gray flannel suit and this yellow gold Hublot. That's why I like the watch. Sleek, elegant, sporty, and wears like a dream on the wrist. You can see here how thin it is, maybe. Only about 6mm in thickness. The quartz movement, the second hand tick, doesn't bother me for 5 seconds. So that's why I like this watch in particular. Also like the brand Hublot quite much. I don't like everything they produce. I, for instance, hate the Hublot King Power 48mm models. I think they are terrible. But there are some pieces I truly enjoy and that I find very refreshing and interesting within the watchmaking industry. So let's talk a bit about why everybody hates it, okay? So first of all, everybody doesn't love Hublot, and Hublot certainly is not for everyone. And why is that? It's because this brand is built mainly on marketing, and they are trying to sell you a lifestyle alongside with the watch. So for example, if you go into Saint-Tropez and you have your villa there, you should naturally have a Hublot to accompany you on the wrist. I mentioned briefly earlier about their movements, that it took a while for them to start to introduce their own in-house movements. And that's one big part of the critique of Hublot, because we have a brand with watches that have a really high retail price, but that have standard movements from ETA and Sellita that are just not on par with the price tag. So we have like a standard movement that you can see in a watch for 1,000 euros, but then you have Hublot here that demands 15,000 euros, for example, for one of their watches. So that's one part that people dislike about the brand. It's that just you pay basically for the branding and not for a 10,000 or 15,000 or even more product. So that's one part. And the second part that I think is one of the big critiques regarding the brand is that the resale value is really poor, and that I think, you know, goes hand in hand with using the cheaper movements. But keep in mind that Hublot, their target audience isn't, you know, the one that resells their watches or try to make a profit of watches. They want the guys that don't care, that want a good looking timepiece on the wrist that is flashy, that, you know, symbolizes wealth and other factors. So that's why people splash 20,000 euros on a Hublot, but they don't even know what movement is powering it. Another factor that affects, you know, the brand image is that Hublot releases so many different limited editions on limited editions every day almost, but every year at least. So that's also one aspect that people think tarnish the brand a bit. It's because, you know, making a limited edition every few weeks, eventually, you know, you end up in the situation where more or less they release a new watch every week and everything is a limited edition. But keep in mind, that's actually part of their marketing strategy. If we go to the FIFA World Cup 2014, of course there should be a limited edition Hublot. If we go to the European Championship 2016, of course there should be a limited edition Hublot. Chelsea wants a Hublot watch for their fans. Of course it should be limited edition, etc. So that's just a part of their marketing strategy, I believe. But I mean, what I want to see more from people is that people actually form their own opinion before starting to, you know, vomit over Hublot watches on social media. Because if you take time, do some research, read about the brand, you actually see that there are some cool parts about the brand, even if you might like the design, that are pretty innovative for the industry, and you shouldn't take that away from the brand. So my 2 cents is just that before you start to hate, at least do some research, and if you still don't like it, feel free to hate. I don't care too much, and that's why I like this watch as well, because it stirs up emotions, and I like to get reactions from people that are different, because I'd say 70% of the people that see this watch don't like it, but the 30% that does see it, it's like, wow, is that really a Hublot? I don't like the brand, but this watch looks really good. So guys, what are your thoughts on the brand and in particular this watch model? Let me know in the comments. All right, that was a quick chat about Hublot and my new Hublot watch. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please hit the thumbs up if you liked it, and if you loved it, please subscribe to the channel. See you next time.